Welcome back to another RiftGuides WildRift video, and today we're going to talk about those picks that you never want to see in your games and you always should see banned because they're just too obnoxious to deal with. But before we hop into that, let's talk about a question of the day. What is your best strategy to climb ranks in WildRift? Let me know in the comments below. The first champion on this list is going to be Gwen. Gwen can be played in the mid lane, in the Baron lane, and in the jungle. And before anyone says anything about her being bad in the jungle, no, you're completely wrong. You have no idea how this champion is supposed to be played. Number one, start with your first ability nowadays and not with your third ability. With your first ability, your clearing speed is decently fast, and once you hit your Nash's Tooth, which you need for the jungle role by the way, you'll be good to go in terms of power farming. Most of the AP junglers in the jungle role are just very good clearers and slowly scale towards their power spike, which is 2 or 3 items. On 3 items, AP champions usually start one-shotting people. And if you meet a Gwen with 3 items, you can believe me, her ultimate ability will just kill you standalone. There's not much you can do about that one. And the fact that she can be untargetable is even more problematic. But as to why you want to see Gwen banned, it's just her obnoxious way of being played. The thing is, even if she just attacks your team in terms of frontline, the backline can't really interact as long as she has a second ability active. She'll be invulnerable or rather untargetable for everything thrown into her or at her, and then nothing happens to her while she's chipping away into your frontline. While doing so, she's also hitting your backline with her needlework, which is her ultimate ability, and slows them down. With her third cast of her ultimate ability, she will take away roughly 50% of the squishy's HP in the backline with just one single button input. That's quite crazy from my perspective. But especially if you consider the high amounts of Yuumis in ranked or just in legendary queue, you want to see this champion banned. Like, she's one of those combinations you never want to see in any game. It's like the Lulu and Tristana. Those two champions combined are just too much of a force that you just cannot deal with, and it's just an inevitable thing until you lose. It's really unskilled and really powerful, and if you just want to save some mental capacity, just ban Gwen or ban Yuumi. Both of this is good enough, but please ban Gwen. It's a really annoying champion. The next champion on this list is going to be Yuumi. As previously mentioned, the combination between Gwen and her or other champions is just too obnoxious to deal with. And when it comes to Yuumi, there's one thing which makes it so troublesome to punish a Yuumi. Luckily, however, it's quite easy to spot a very bad Yuumi. During the laning phase, Yuumi wants to spend as little time as possible attached to the ally. She wants to auto-attack and bully people. And then once she gets low, she wants to attach and just abuse the fact that she cannot be punished for anything she does. As the game goes on, this obviously changes and she becomes just a little parasite that sits on people and makes them unkillable and gives them infinite amounts of stats. The issue is with this champion and AP champions is that the scaling on the second ability grants too many stats. It's just too much ability power, and in comparison it's too little AD, funnily enough. Well, it's not too little because it's already enough, but it's just way too much AP. So when you hit your free item spike on your normal AP carry and have Yuumi with you, then the Yuumi will make you have roughly 4.5 items in terms of raw AP value, and then you literally are so accelerated that you one-tap everything. And it's very unskilled because you can't do anything about it anymore once you hit those item breakpoints. You need to misplay so hard for this to not work out. It's actually confusing how people manage to consistently lose with this. And just to avoid this, just remove Yuumi. Remove Yuumi because Yuumi's laning phase is also disgusting. A bad Yuumi player will do nothing during laning phase and just sit there and press her third ability. A good Yuumi player will demonize you. They will detach and beat you. They will just slap you all the time and you can't do much about it, because if you try to fight them and you can't kill them, they'll sustain. And once they sustain, they already have won. And unless you have so much damage to immediately kill them or out-sustain them, you will lose eventually. And on level 5, they'll shut you down, kill you, and snowball the heck out of this game. So if you face a Yuumi, either make sure you have enough damage to get them killed, or accelerate the map. You will not want to stay in a lane and just look at them and allow the enemy to scale. That is a death sentence. The next champion on this list is Zoe. Zoe can be played as an AP carry or a mid laner. You're really free to do whatever you want with that one. And for Zoe's laning phase, she's very dominant in the way she's played in the laning phase. Her first ability and using the empowered auto attacks will grant you a lot of bonus damage during the laning phase, and the access to either a crowd control tool with the third ability or the rundown mechanic with the balloons and bonus summoner spells you can have on your second ability allows you to really be dominant throughout the entire laning phase. This also transitions into the mid and late game because now this champion becomes a really troublesome fellow. The moment Zoe hits her third ability onto anyone at the mid game once she has Ludens completed, they are at risk of dying immediately. She just has to hit them from a safe distance, apply ignite and an auto attack, and most of the time the enemy, unless it's a very tanky one, immediately dies. So whenever you try to do an objective against Zoe, you are very much in trouble in case she hits you with anything. It also sets up very well for the allies to go on you and just makes it very difficult for you to deal with it because you are not allowed to stand together, you need to space out properly, and in a solo queue context this is very difficult. With this in mind, Zoe needs to play very well to make it really powerful, but if she is mastered as said in an earlier statement, then you are in for a big troublesome experience. She can hit you from so far away that you can't really do too much about it, she can stun you or rather like put you to sleep, and once that happens you will just die. And how do you shut down this champion when upon picking up a summoner spell or an item that's on the floor and activating it, she becomes Sonic the Hedgehog? You see, it already has got a nerf, but it's still not enough, and rather than dealing with this, you're better off just banning this champion because it's too powerful in the sense of dealing damage, especially with the magic pen build. The next champion that's really troublesome to deal with is Zed. Unless you want to play Garen and be like a super hard counter during the laning phase and just be obnoxious for him, you are probably in for some trouble. The reason is the following. Zed is an assassin and solo queue assassins always get fed, and you probably wonder why. It's mostly linked to people not paying too much attention. And Zed is one of those champions that if they are fed and only slightly fed with, for example, a Youmuu's rush and they whatever happened to rush or have sudden impact as a rune, they'll demolish 50% of your armor on one item. And they'll just kill you without using ultimate. And if we've hit that point, which is most of the time happening if a Zed gets one single kill on you during the early game, then you're in for trouble. He has no reason to fear any dive onto you because he can always get away, or he can go for a really insane rotational plays because of the bonus movement speed from Youmuu's. So how do you punish Zed? Level 1 to 2 he is relatively weak because he's just a melee champion. All you have to do is position yourself outside of your minion wave so you don't give him both hitting the minions and you with spells. If you can make sure of that, you can punish him a little bit, take away his HP bar and then remove his ability to play. If that way he is unable to get something done pre-level 5, you're completely fine. However, even if you get him killed and he hits level 5 later on and you don't have summoner spells available, he will kill you. And this is something you have to be aware of. Just because you killed a Zed before level 5, but don't have access to summoner spells anymore, he's very likely to just kill you on level 5 because there's nothing you can do to defend yourself with. And as the game progresses, his ultimate cooldown will be so low that he can just spam it on cooldown. And comparatively to the stasis enchant, he will have a lot of uses for those and can always back out in absolute safety. There's not much that can kill a good Zed, only himself getting himself killed. This is something many of players need to understand, that most of the time Zed dying is his own choice or a technical misplay about how he uses his own abilities. The next champion we need to talk about is also a flexible one. It's Yone for the mid lane, the Baron lane and obviously the jungle role. This champion is an absolute bane for solo queue and even competitive play. He has the ability to just deal with his Gromp, get his third first abilities charge ready, jump over the wall and just gank you and snap back to his Gromp and be happy back to farming. So his investment for ganks is relatively low, while also securing the highest success rate any jungler can possibly have if played really well with the proper setup. He has 2 spells that set up things with his ultimate and his first ability's third charge, and once he locks them down with any of those, the enemy is most likely destined to die. That is, if the Yone is properly farmed up. Yone needs a little bit of time to be strong enough to get something done in terms of one-shotting people, but in the jungle role, or just generally speaking, it's not that difficult to do. Most of the time you'll default to a Blade of the Ruin King and then into a Infinity Edge, and then you're fine with one-shotting people. But this is something that is really troublesome for most people. The one-shot happens from off-screen. So This is the reason why you want to remove Yone, because you always have to have this idea at the back of your head that the Yone might be waiting out of your screen, just waiting for you to move up and then instantly kill you. And once he tags you, you will die unless you have stasis. There is not much for you to do because he has too much DPS. And therefore it's just easier to have this champion removed because it's so difficult to play against him and so nerve-wracking to just get immediately one-shot with little to no counterplay. And that's it for today's video. If you liked the video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel and come back for more tomorrow. See you.